Two real-life planning scenarios illustrate the difference between how inheriting a Roth IRA works currently under one rule compared to the other rule and how you optimize it for your situation. I've got that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. You need to understand the 10-year rule and how it impacts inheriting an IRA or a Roth IRA, even a 401k, qualified retirement accounts that have tax benefits. You've got to understand how the new 10-year rule works, not just for those of you that maybe have the catcher's mitt and think, yeah, at some point I'm probably going to inherit some dollars when my folks pass, but because you're building wealth and you've got to understand how your assets will pass along to the next generation because it may influence your planning. So you got to understand the 10-year rule, and it is nuanced and it is complicated and it doesn't make sense. Work with your certified financial planner to understand it and ensure it applies. You can apply it appropriately to your situation and to the planning work that you do. Now, in the past week, had two different situations where they both of these families inherited a Roth IRA from a parent. Both of them did, which is fairly unusual. The Roth IRA has been around for a while. However, it's not a lot of people have inherited Roth IRAs because the folks that are using them mostly are still building wealth. It's not that the folks that have passed away have had a lot of their wealth in it. So this is going to be a bigger and bigger deal in the future and probably should influence your planning because given the choice, I probably want to inherit a Roth IRA instead of an IRA, and you might want to leave behind a Roth IRA instead of an IRA. Depends on your multi-generational planning. But these two different situations illustrate how even though it's an inherited Roth, it might work two different ways. And you've got to know which way it applies to you so that you can optimize it for your situation. Scenario number one, and I'm sharing this number one because it was the first client situation that I dealt with last week that pertained to this. Dad died. We've served now actually 3 generations. So we were serving mom and dad. Dad died in 2010. We continued to serve mom, did tax planning, did financial planning, all that sort of stuff. And then she died a few years later in 2014. They died of old age, in their late 80s and lived a fantastic life. Were unbelievable people, actually. And ended up working with the kids because of how they saw their folks' financial life structured and the opportunities that they were able to take advantage of and the strategies they implemented. And the kids said, that's what I would like as well. And so we've been working with the kids ever since. And that's a fairly common situation when you're doing comprehensive financial planning. It's truly comprehensive and can extend multiple generations. So you might be thinking, well, wait a second, 2010 and then 2014, how did these folks have Roth IRAs? It really wasn't that popular back then. I know we were doing Roth conversions and we're actually trying to get, when it made sense from a tax planning standpoint, as much of their estate growing in a tax-free way as possible. So it's not like they had millions of dollars in the Roth IRA, but it was enough that each of the kids inherited, about $200,000 of Roth IRA. That was unheard of back then. And so obviously you've got each of these kids has $200,000 or so in a Roth IRA and an inherited Roth IRA growing tax-free. And as they make withdrawals, it's tax-free. Gosh, they're not in any rush to withdraw those dollars. Not at all. How can we keep that train going for as long as possible? Well, in this scenario, because mom died, second to die, died before 1/1 of 2020. It's before the new Secure Act rules that turned it into the 10-year rule. So they're grandfathered in, and really ever since that time, when mom passed in 2014 and left the IRAs to the two kids, the Roth IRAs, we've been withdrawing a required minimum distribution from that inherited Roth every single year and not a penny more. We've just taken the little amount. And so actually we've had to take withdrawals because it's required, but the account's been able to grow over time. So they've got more of their wealth growing tax-free. And in the future, if they need those dollars, they can take more than the minimum amount, or those dollars will just continue to grow tax sheltered as they take out the minimum amount. So yeah, that's how the old rules work. And it still applies today because it's grandfathered. A Roth IRA, an inherited Roth IRA, there's no required minimum distribution on a Roth IRA that you own. But if you inherited a Roth IRA, you were listed as the beneficiary, you inherited a Roth IRA from someone that passed before 1/1 of 2020, then you were allowed to stretch it, and you're still grandfathered and able to still stretch it moving forward. But you do have to take a required minimum distribution, even though it's an inherited Roth. A little unusual, that's how it works. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two, mom just died this summer. And so emotions are still raw, and she was battling some pretty awful health stuff that we've dealt with in my family too. It's awful. So certainly in one lens, she's no longer suffering, and yet still emotionally challenging. Now, she didn't have an enormous amount in her Roth IRA. We were doing some conversions. She didn't have a ton, but even though she left behind a husband and a widower now, she was adamant. We had this discussion. She wanted to leave her Roth IRA to the kids. And there were a few reasons for that, but part of it was she knew that the kids were raising children of their own and trying to establish themselves financially. And so she thought, if I go first, husband doesn't need this. I want it to go to the kids. And so now these kids, and you could argue that wasn't a wise thing to do. It would have been financially, mathematically better to leave it to the husband. But those were her intentions. Those were her wishes. And so that's what we did. And so now the kids are inheriting this Roth IRA from mom. And how does that work? Mom was in her 80s. And so she was past her required beginning date and died here in 2025. Well, in this scenario, she died after 1/1 of 2020. So the Secure Act 1.0 rules apply. It's now under the 10-year rule. She's not grandfathered into the old rules like scenario number one. The account needs to be emptied within 10 years. However, even though she was taking required minimum distributions from her IRA, there's no required beginning date that applies to the Roth IRA. So the inherited Roth in this scenario number two, there is no annual required distribution. There isn't. It just needs to be emptied by the end of the 10th year. And so that would be by 12/31 of 2035. Fairly unique. And I think a little bit more understandable when you're dealing with an IRA inherited before the 10-year rule and now after the 10-year rule, because it's logical. There's RMD that's required in both situations. Not with the Roth. The Roth it has its unique features with the required minimum distribution, and they apply differently during the stretch tenure if you're grandfathered, and now the 10-year rule. So how does this apply to you? If you happen to be inheriting a Roth IRA today, you're going to be under the 10-year rule. Know that you're not needing to take a required minimum distribution from it each and every year. You probably don't want to. If you need the resources, great, they're there for you and you can withdraw them tax-free. But if you don't, you probably don't want to take anything from that inherited Roth until you absolutely have to. And so allow it to grow. Even if it's just earning interest, you don't want a lot of growth, you don't want a lot of risk. Even if it's just earning interest, you want it to be sheltered in that inherited Roth growing tax-free. And then the other part of the application is, how does this apply to your assets? And the choices that, and I know it's hard to think about, but the choices that your heirs will need to make as they inherit dollars from your estate. Do you want them to inherit dollars from the Roth where they have choice and flexibility and no tax consequences? Or is it more appropriate for you to continue to shelter and those dollars to be inherited by your heirs pre-tax and 10-year rule and all of that? Make that decision, work proactively on your tax picture and your financial plan and estate plan with your certified financial planner. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one of my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.